Hey everyone, this is going to be the final video on the Spin-2-Win Rage Vortex of Berserking build. It's become pretty decent, I'm at least quite happy, so let me take you again on a small journey and explain the final character. Let's dive in. Let's first take you through a few character upgrades since the last episode. I crafted decent flasks and automated them, providing nice quality of life and offensive and defensive capabilities. I made Rage Vortex of Berserking 2020 as quality provides base radius of the skill. I'm getting the counting on full life at 90% life with the passive nodes to make use of the damage when on full life support gem. I'm getting the mastery here that I'm counted as full life at 90% so I can make use of the damage on full life support gem. And talking about life, I don't have a lot of it in this clip to indicate a bit how squishy this character can be when you are not buffed and ramped up. I found a new two-handed axe from Foster's Gambling, crafted fizz on it, and I'm quite happy for the moment. I managed to 5-link it for Cyclone and it's a decent damage increase. My tree is still scuffed at this point, however. I do like with some shrines how crazy the AoE can get on this skill, and that's even without additional support gems. I'm upgrading some more King's March, although I ended up not using it at all in the end. I did find a very good amulet in my dump tab with +1 to all skills and a bunch of intelligence, and as I'm trying to run some intelligence based support gems in this time, that comes in handy. I fixed my resistances a bit with the new amulet and it's a decent upgrade. I'm getting a very lucky drop, a reflecting mist. I've never seen this in my life. I tried my luck on this amulet and the outcome isn't even bad. I just don't want all these resistances, and added physical damage against me is not something I'm looking for. I'm doing another weapon upgrade. This is yet another Faustus gamble on which I'm practically spending all my gold, and it's a decent base. After 5-linking it, I craft Fizz and Blind on hit on this. It still has an open prefix, but I don't have an exalted orb until much later when we close our eyes, say a little prayer, and then this happens. But hey, it's still a 700 plus Fizz DPS axe, it's good enough. Here you see some maps and the damage of it in Toxic Sewers. I spawn an Amanamu, I kill it, I get the boots with Corpse Walker and decided to see if that also counts as a spell, and thus I can't use it. And yeah, it does count as a spell, so indeed it is yet again something that's completely useless to the Behemoth class. I put 20 GCPs on Intimidating Cry, reducing the cooldown recovery. I use that skill to exert the Rage Storm, so this is very helpful. And all this time I've been trying to make crit work, but ultimately I decided against it, meaning it's time for the final setup. Some more defensive flasks for a ton of armor. I D-level Culling Strike to meet the dexterity requirements. I'm spending the little eldritch currency I have on a mix of offensive and defensive stats such as maximum resistance. I almost ruined my weapon trying to 6-link it, failing that attempt and then not even having enough currency to 5-link it again, meaning I must sell a bunch of Jeweler's orbs and even alteration orbs, but ultimately we get our original weapon back. And yeah, that's also SSF for you. I drop a Kitava's Feast, which just isn't great for this build, but a fun weapon nonetheless. I even get an Aegis Aurora, also a great item, but I'm sticking with two-handed axes, and that is the progression until this point. I did conduct an experiment after dropping the Comb's Primacy in a map, putting some quality on it and 5-linking it. And later I found 2 more of these items actually. As I mentioned in the previous video, it seems that Comb's Primacy is a good fit for the build. Rage on hit, Culling Strike which equals to 10% more damage, and 70% Fizz as extra fire damage because of the rage. The issue, however, with this weapon is twofold for me. First, the damage output and low attack speed make it synergize less with my skills, and second, I'm unsure how to skill this one exactly. Should I focus on physical support gems or elemental or neither? I don't know really when this conversion takes place. So I went to Path of Building and you see me running a map here with the weapon, but no matter which of the options that I tried, it felt a bit worse in terms of damage compared to my physical damage axe, and that was also true according to the PoE, so ultimately I decided against this option. I do think it's cool to one day run a complete comms outfit just for the power fantasy aspect of it, and I did find most of the components in fact. Another experiment, if you want to call it that, is going crit, but with the current position on the passive tree, I had to invest so much into crit chance and crit multi without significant gains that ultimately I specced out of crit entirely and went resolute technique. I made some other choices as well, but I will go over those in the in-depth character overview. Before we get into the character though, I want to explain the overall build philosophy here, or at least the choices. I set out to do a Behemoth using two-handed physical damage, and I decided I simply wanted to stick with that decision. I didn't have that many regret orbs at first to experiment, and the build was actually coming along fine. I just needed more tweaking and gear. So in short, I needed more time. I watched a video on how Impale works, I will link that in the description, it was very helpful, and I made the choice to fully invest into Impale. By going resolute technique, you are always hitting, which works well with Impale, and it saves you concerns about crit chance, crit multi, or accuracy, as I'm always hitting. That should explain most of the choices going forward. Let's start with the character overview. I'm level 95, I have 4.3k life, around 80% max elemental resistances, 76% chaos res, 36 fortify, usually around 65 rage, and easily 1000 rampage stacks. Life regen at 180 per second does help a bit here and there, and the leech is 860 life per second, which is usually enough. I have 5 endurance charges and around 13k armor with the flasks up. Let's go to the skills. The main skill, Rage Vortex of Berserking, is supported by Melee Fizz, Brutality, which prevents you from doing non-physical damage, Pulverize, which helps with AoE, Impale support to hit that 100% Impale chance and that Impale effect, and damage on full life support, which works because I took a passive mastery that counts me as full life on 90% life. With the amount of leech, I'm practically always on full life. Cyclone, I wasn't able to 6 links, so it's just 5 links, and that is the exact same as Rage Vortex, meaning Melee Fizz, Brutality, Pulverize and Impale. The Helm has the same war cries as last time, but now it's a better support gem and also some quality, so I can use Intimidating Cry more often for that double damage. And finally, the gloves with the movement skill Leap Slam, attached to Endurance Charge on stun, which procs a lot as Leap Slam stuns enemies on full life, Calling Strike for bosses and faster attacks. In the boots, I'm just leveling support gems. The gear then. I have this weapon, which with Resolute Technique has a bunch of dead stats, but it's still the best I could do in SSF in just a few days. Someone asked me about recombinating in the comment section, but I'm not going to interact with that system. I don't like it at all. It's an amazing system for upgrades, I'm not denying that it's very useful, but I hate it with a passion. And I'm here to have fun, so it's gonna be this axe. The helm, very decent, some attributes that I need, AoE. The chest, good life and resistances on there, plus decent Eldritch Implicit. Gloves, the same thing really, great life, AoE, resistances. Belt, same thing. And the boots that have onslaught on kill, which procs all the time during maps. Then the rings, they're not amazing, but they do fill out the resistance requirements, and my amulet is also fine. The +1 may seem good, and it's not bad of course, but with melee skills additional levels aren't as strong compared to spells. The anointment is more Impale effect and action physical damage, this works very well for my build. Flasks are now fully automated and provide a lot more armor. One thing that would significantly increase the fun with the build would be a headhunter, or perhaps a bit more modest, an inspired learning. Modifiers that you steal are going to be so good with physical damage, and it should result in some pretty crazy AoE as well. An inspired learning is definitely farmable with some effort in SSF, and there's a good spot on the passive tree to slot it as well at the south part of it. Then the passive tree. I will skip over most damage and life nodes and rage nodes and fortify nodes as they are very straightforward and I covered them in the last video. Instead, let's talk about some of the choices here. The Ascendancy, by the way, hasn't changed either since last video. I take the Prismatic Skin with all the max res here and its mastery preventing curses from lowering my resistances. That allows you to run a bunch of more maps without getting extra resistances on gear to counter that. I have Unwavering Stance because you don't want to be stunned, and I am a pure armor build anyway, and looking at the attack mastery here a little bit lower on the tree, it prevents enemies from blocking attacks, which is quite useful. Then the Impale clusters, I have 3 of them. There is a 2-handed Impale cluster on the left, capping Impale chance at 100% because of the Impale support gem, which offers 60%. My hits are already ignoring enemy physical damage reduction, but with this mastery, Impales do as well. The second Impale cluster adds a bunch of Impale effect, and the mastery provides an additional hit chance, which is strong because the more Impales are on an enemy, the more damage they take from each hit. The regular Impale caps at 5, but with this mastery there's a chance you add a 6th Impale for 10% more damage. Because of that, the last Impale cluster is also strong because it guarantees an additional Impale stack, scaling the damage even further. And talking about this mastery, I don't think it necessarily increases the overall DPS, but it makes the damage apply faster. Just like last video, I'm still on Blood Magic, which seems like a no-brainer if you can't use spells. And then I already mentioned it, but Resolute technique. It just takes away so many issues, and by staying with 2-handed physical axes, I couldn't find a way to reliably crit, so this node combined with a bunch of increased damage and Impale resulted in very decent overall DPS number. For the Pantheon, I'm using the Brine King to prevent freeze and Aberrath because I'm farming Searing Exarch. There are various resources in the video description, but let's take a quick look at the PoB. After all the configurations are set and combining Cyclone and Rage Vortex into full DPS, I'm at around 900k DPS, which doesn't sound like much, and if you see me on map bosses, which take around 8 to 10 seconds to kill, it likely isn't that much either. However, take into account it's a few days into League start, and also it's super consistent DPS, because you are literally always channeling these 2 skills, so the numbers aren't everything. You should look at it more as dot DPS than regular DPS in my opinion. Plus, you can see that if we would 6-link Cyclone, which would happen eventually of course if I had more time, plus get a source of adrenaline such as the Death Rush or Tanuani gloves, it would provide a good boost up to 1.3 million. Most of all though, you could get a much better weapon over time, as mine is only 720 physical DPS. If I were to create this character again from a League start perspective using regular classes, I think you can turn this into a really strong character actually. It would be so easy to get a Curse, 2 auras, Blood Rage for free frenzy charges, and for the rest just nothing else. Sure, you would lose Rampage, which you can fix using a weapon swap or unique gloves, and you would lose some Fortify stacks and definitely a good amount of Rage, but having access to spells would make up for that for sure. Plus of course the regular Ascendancies, so either a Juggernaut for a bunch of tankiness, Berserker to make use of Rage and go crit, or go Slayer for stacking a bunch of frenzy charges, AoE effect, and you could even go crit if you want. If this build doesn't get nerfed, I think it's a serious consideration as a League starter. It's pretty bad at bossing, so that part will likely still suck, but double Spin-2-Win and all this movement speed is pretty fun. Finally, the journey from simply starting a character with a new ascendancy towards what you're witnessing on screen has been incredibly fun, and within very limited timelines and very limited options because of this Behemoth ascendancy. I'm quite satisfied with what I came up with, and I'm thankful for the inspiration that, for example, Mathil and Sepk provided. More and more, I'm starting to understand what makes a build work and what doesn't. I mean, it takes around 10,000 hours in my case, but hey. So hopefully that upwards trend continues, as it's not a success every time. But doing this in SSF with a fresh start, just trying out, experimenting, having fun and progressing at the cute, relaxed SSF pace, it's quite enjoyable, as is making these videos about those adventures. And from the number of views, I can tell you like watching them, so that's good as well. The next Zero to Hero will be in Path of Exile 2, and maybe after that even in Last Epoch if I decide to return to that game, but yeah, that's a whole different story. Mostly for the upcoming couple of weeks, expect some PoE 2 SSF content. Either way, I hope you had a good time watching this episode. Let me know what you think. Also, let me know if you have any suggestions or if I made any errors. Subscribe and like for more PoE SSF content. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.